Matt, we were just having a conversation about how life is just too short for event marketers to work for a company, to work for a leadership
Yeah.
that doesn't really get event marketing. Tell me a little bit about why that is.
Yeah, I like that because I think that's like what we were saying was that's kind of the Dave Gerhardt thing, right? Where he talks about, you know, as a marketer working for a CEO that doesn't get it.
Mm-hmm.
And it's actually kind of a running joke on LinkedIn right now, which is funny. But yeah, no, I think the same with events, and it's tough. And I think that's the majority, right? I think the majority of companies and event marketers are working for CMOs, CEOs, leadership, executives, and companies that are just not that they don't get it. It's just that they're stuck doing it the way that they've always done it. So that stigma is there.
Yeah.
And I think it takes a lot to shake that tree. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? It takes a lot to make that change throughout an organization because essentially I think that companies have this expectation or this want that their trade shows and events are a sales and marketing channel, but they don't treat them that way. They treat them as a cost of doing business. So it's misaligned, right?
Totally.
They want it. Their expectation is like, oh, how come we're not getting leads and pipeline and what's the ROI and this and that? It's like, well, that's great that that's your expectation, but we're not treating it that way. So I think there's a big miss there.
When you say that, I think of that saying that's something along the lines of misery is expectations not meeting reality.
Of course,
right?
yeah,
So
absolutely.
why don't we talk a little bit? I'd love to frame the conversation around what it looks like to not get events.
Yeah,
Then I want to talk about what it looks like to get events. And then I want to go into like situational awareness of
yep,
what these conversations feel like so you get these red flags and really dial in on the impact that as event marketers,
yep,
if we are in a job and we're looking around and this stuff isn't really happening, why it makes most sense for us to just not try to write, maybe it makes
yeah,
some sense to write the shit, but like really it's like GTFO and go
yeah.
find a place where you can move on your career. So
So kind of done wrong versus done right, and then what that person that's dealing with it's being influenced and what they should do. Yeah, got it.
why it's so
Yeah,
important
sure.
to them,
That's
right?
easy.
So
Do it.
let's start with done wrong, right? You
Yeah.
you when I first brought this up, you immediately started breaking it down into a framework.
Yeah. So I think there's three parts to it, right? One is as I just described, which is a company that is misaligned where you have to make a decision. Do you want to treat your trade shows and events like a sales and marketing channel or like a cost of doing business? I think majority of what's going on is the expectation is that they're going to get sales and marketing channel results, but they are treating it and they are incentivizing it and they are running it like a cost of doing business. So there's definitely a misalignment there because I think we can all agree the way you shop for insurance for your business is very different than the way then you go to market. One is a cost of doing business, one is a strategy, right? So it's very different. So that would be the example there.
Cost of doing business is we've always been there. Our competitors will say that
Yeah.
we're not around if it doesn't happen, right?
I think that's a part of it, right? I mean, those are excuses that I hear.
Yeah.
Those are answers.
Yeah.
Why do you go to the show? We've always gone. Our competitors are there. It'll look bad if we don't. Like I've heard that. That is all cost of business mentality, and I think it also ties into companies that when you say, "What's your strategy at this trade show?" and they're like, "Well, what do you mean?" Or "I'm not really sure." Or I've used examples in the past where people have 400, 500, 600 square foot booth and 100 square feet is the conference room, but they don't use it, right? I mean, well, we've always had a conference room. Oh, okay, great. Well,
Yeah. So
when I was a kid, I always rode a bike, right? And I'm 38, I don't ride a bike anymore. Yeah, it's like, so I think that's that mentality when it comes to cost of doing business.
when I hear that mentality of cost of doing business, I imagine that the questions are just get me a price on this thing.
Yes.
Hey, event manager,
Yes.
just find out what that costs, get it as cheap as possible, and just make it happen. I just want
Yeah.
to show up,
Yes.
right? That's kind of it.
It is. I
Okay.
think that's kind of like whether you're an agency, whether you're like design and builder, event marketing, a company like us, whether you're just a pure exhibit house, whether you're an AV, whatever it may be. That yes, it is a lot of like the person thinks they know what they need. You have the answers, and they're just seeking that from
Yep.
you,
Yep.
rather than seeking to understand what it is that they're trying to accomplish
Yeah.
and how you can help improve, solve the problem, or make it more efficient. Would be there. So you're like really, like I said, when it comes to what it looks like when it's done wrong, One is that misalignment. Is it a sales and marketing channel, or is it a cost of doing business? And I think where that next tier goes down to is leadership, right? So whether it's CEO, whether it's directors, VPs, what are their goals for the event, right? What is being incentivized? Because a really good example is a lot of people have quantity of leads. Is something that has to be reported back, and it's important, and it's an indicator. I don't really know what it's an indicator of, to be honest with you, right? Unless you can then tell me, we scan 400 leads, 50 of those become an A-B lead. We're grading A to D. And of those 50 A-B leads, we close 10, or we bid on 20, we close 7. If you can do that for me, sure. But very rarely do you get that. It's like, oh, no, we just need leads. You're like, okay, sure. So that's a bad indicator, right, as you move downward. So what is the KPIs? What are the incentives? What are people being asked to do at events from leadership? And that sort of then goes down to alluding to like what the event marketer is trying to do and what everybody there is trying to do. Are there aligned goals?
Got it. So it goes from find out how much it costs to exhibit at this place. That's like the first, right? Like you're being treated as a taskmaster. That's the first red flag. If you go a level deeper, it's, well, we're going there to get leads. So you have an actual objective, but if the objective doesn't tie to an outcome,
Yeah.
then that's the wrong way of doing it too. Because then you don't know if you won or not. You can get 1,000 leads and feel like you did really, really well. But then if you're on the back end of that and like there's no sales to it, then
Do you have a follow-up strategy? Are those leads any good? Is your ICP there? I mean, I can go on for days about leads and how they're not enough to be a gauge.
Yeah.
Most companies that I know that we've worked with that treat trade shows or events like a cost of doing business are focused on driving leads.
Yeah.
That's it though.
Okay.
But when you go down into the depth of that, they don't really have any answers. It's because they've never really talked about it.
Yeah.
Or it's not being driven from above.
Got it. So those are kind of like the first two levels. You had a third level?
Third level for me is moving downward, goes into the event marketer and the person, the event manager, the event marketer, the marketer, whoever it is that company is running these trade shows and running these events, right? Oftentimes, and I said this a lot, they are event planners at heart. And I do think you need an event planner. Like, I think it's easier to take an event planner and turn them into an event marketer than to take a marketer and turn them into an event marketer, right?
Yeah.
So this person now, they are going to plan, they are going to execute, they are going to coordinate. That is what they do. They're going to do it well. But now you're left with them where they kind of don't really know, like, am I being tasked with making sure that we achieve results? Like, are we treating this like a sales and marketing channel? Is that being breathed down my neck? Am I asking to come back with reports and a return and to hit initiatives? Or am I really just being asked to like get a price, get a design, get a layout, get the food and beverage, execute it well, make sure we do a good job? And like, is it all really Manila? You know what I mean? And then they're typically overworked. Too many events, not enough staff, not enough resources. So then there's really just no time to think about anything other than just executing the event. And that shows up the most where I've been doing this 12 years, where typically companies, like if I had to just completely subjectively guess on timeframes that people come to us for stuff, very rarely are they coming in enough time to strategically think through something and plan. So they are under the gun. They are crunched for time. And then they're coming to us. So I just need this. I just need this from you, right? Which is fine. And they're under the gun, but they're under the gun because they're not treating it in a strategic style way as a sales and marketing channel. It's just coming to them and they're getting to it as they can get to it.
The term seat at the table kind of like pops in my head as you're talking about this. Does that ring true to you?
I think seat at the table is tough. I think event marketers, especially more high level ones, people that are director level, people that have a little bit of staff under them, I think they want a seat at the table, right? And I think that won't happen. I think that won't happen until events become more an integral part of the sales and marketing channel and process. You have some companies that identify it. You have some companies that do not. But overall, you have a lot of people spending a lot of money on these trade shows and events. And it's like, how can you close the loop? Events are a great period in time, multiple times per year, for your entire sales and marketing process to get really good touch points, to be catalyst for pipeline, right? New leads, new pipe, increasing average customer spend. I mean, we talk about these things all the time, accelerating deals. Like, how are they not a part of the sales and marketing channel? That honestly, that's just like fucking crazy to me.
Yeah.
Like, how is it not a part of it? How is it not being considered?
Yeah.
How is it not something that you're like, okay, here's like some magic moments we have where we're face to face rather than cold calling them or emailing them or bugging them for a demo or like all that BS. Like you're getting this point in time where you can meet face to face, engage, deliver an experience.
Yep.
So I think it's just being viewed wrong, but I will say I do see a little bit of a shift. Not so much with like third-party conferences and trade shows, but just more in this, validity in face-to-face, right? I think a lot of people are messing with like private dinners, host events, smaller style things, and I think those things are working for them. And again, that's face-to-face, and it's becoming more a part of it. So that goes back to seat at the table. I mean, which is what you're asking me.
Yeah, and I kind of see, like with seat at the table, I think of, there's almost like different rooms where that seat could be, I think like, let's say you have one event and you're given plenty of time to plan an event.
Yeah.
That's one seat at the table. They're like, hey, this is what we want to do at an event. And they tell you the objectives and you get plenty of time to like draw that out.
Yeah.
Then there's the idea of, hey, we have a campaign and we're thinking about incorporating events. It's giving you a seat at the table there to see how you tap in. And then we're putting together the marketing plan for the year. How much budget do you need?
The campaign thing you just threw out there, I actually said this to Cody. I said this to Cody and Molly the other day. I asked them after a call, I said, isn't it fascinating how many people are coming to us? And I don't want to say last minute, but we're not talking 6-8 months in advance. We're talking 3-4 months in advance. Enough time, plenty of time to do the things we need to do.
Yeah.
Last minute would be like 30, 40, 50 days, right?
Yeah.
But they're not coming 6, 8, 9 months in advance, and they're not coming with a campaign that they're trying to drive home. They're not like, hey, you know what? Marketing's running this really cool campaign. It's like a 6-month thing, or it's a push right now. We want to fold this into the booth. We want to fold it very rarely. And then when you're trying to have a conversation about creating a campaign, creating a theme, creating a concept, they draw a blank because it's not their space. So if you talk seat at the table, honestly, I don't even know if it needs to be vertically with like VPs or executives. I think it almost, if I was, depending on size of the organization, I would have it be more laterally. I would be, who is their like equal manager, director level person in marketing, and who is that person in sales, and who is the person in events, right? Like, what are we doing? What are we driving? What's a campaign that I can use at this event? How can I tie this into things? Because people are searching for concepts, for themes. Everybody wants to do something cool. I want a nice design. God, it drives me fucking nuts, right? We want to wow and stand out. Okay, I'm like, yeah, let me pull that out, right? And sure, but like, you're the company. I'm not your company.
Yeah.
So what's the campaign? What's your initiatives? Who is the client, right? What's the problem you solve? What is the point of view? And they don't have these things.
Yeah.
So there's a huge disconnect.
Yeah.
So why can't they should be coming to the table with a campaign. What's your company working on? What are they running? What are they pushing? And go from there.
Cool. So that's kind of like the 3 levels of what a company that doesn't get it at different places.
Yeah.
Give me an example of somebody that does get it, that has done this really well, what that looks and feel like.
Yeah, I think, so one example that a good example I have is a client's been with us 2.5 years, I'd say. It's a little bit different. I mean, they're a pretty big company and they're a good company, been around a long time. But for some reason, in the way they operate, we have direct access to their president. And she is awesome. That's not normal. You're not normally talking to the owner, the president, the CEO. CEOs will sometimes get on calls just to tell you what they want, right? I say that as a CEO, so it's okay. Yeah. So they are interesting. When they came to us, the consensus was essentially that they are exhibiting. They feel like their customers there. They feel like they should be having a lot of success, and they don't feel like they are. Now, no objective data behind that, but they were able to tell us leads and what those leads turned into and converted to, and definitely wasn't enough. So they were considering what they were going to do with their trade shows. But she was like, no, the customer is there. Our current customer is there. Like she was like adamant. And so, having that person that can make decisions and know, and just our pitch, which is typically like, hey, we'll talk about the logistics and the booth and the layout and all the shit that comes. But what we want to talk about first is like, we want to talk about, why aren't you having success at this show? Where is the miss?
Yep.
Right? Like, you're saying your customer's there. Okay, now who is the customer? Why are they there? What are they doing there? What is the show like? What's the format of the show? And then that bleeds into what makes you different, right? What's so good about your brand? Do you have longstanding history? Do you have a unique value proposition? What's your point of view?
Yep.
What are we selling here? What are we, right? And she was like all in, bought in, 100%. Let us do our thing. And first we created like a theme and a concept and an idea, right? An idea around how this should be done strategically.
Can you give me the idea, like kind of like what the idea was?
I could give it to you basically. So they're the call center for most of the security systems in the US. They're one of the major ones, right? So when you call and you're like, being robbed, or your house is on fire, or like your carbon monoxide detector goes off, like they're the call centers that are supporting these security companies. So they have multi-level of clients, commercial, residential, different layers with distributors and things like that. Anyway, it really all dials back to like safety, security, this confidence in like, when you call, we'll pick up, we're reliable, this and that. So, that was kind of, we worked out like a sketch theme and a concept and an idea. Those came with talking points. Those came with like, this is your pitch on the floor. This is what we're trying to execute. This is what we're trying to exude. And then also like, hey, if it's current customer, hey, if it's a new customer, hey, if it's on the commercial side, hey, if it's on the residential, right? And, we came up with a bunch of concepts, and most of them revolved around the total exhibit looking more like a commercial or residential building. We did this really cool thing with windows, like peering inside with like families having dinner. So it's just like that sense of security and safety and reliability that either the security companies want, residential, commercial people want. It's like saying, here's the things you protect. Right? And we help protect them. So there's this whole story. Designed this really awesome booth. It was definitely different than they were typical. You could take their booth, put anybody's brand on it, and use it on the show floor. This totally different. And they loved it. And they bought in, they spent more, and they're like, we're going to run with it. And they crushed it. They doubled their leads, they doubled their pipeline, and they did a very good job closing. So she was ecstatic. And then what that turned into was extreme buy-in with us. Adding shows where she felt that they had other customers, piloting shows, doing concept ideas for those, and it's grown. And they've become a really good client, really good customer. And now every year we're doing new concepts. We're rethinking it. We're taking messaging and ideas that worked. We're taking, setup ideas that worked and just evolving them for it.
Does that company have an event director or an event marketer?
Yeah, they have a person that runs events for them. Yeah.
And how did she tie into that?
I can't recall he or she. Trying to think. I don't know actually, but they were definitely there and present, right? I mean, I think when your president gets on the call, and the president wasn't on every single call, right? It was just in the beginning, whatever. It was in the beginning stages, and then this person kind of took over with like the execution and getting it done. So I think probably for that person, depending, and again, I don't know how experienced or not, right? This is Lance's client. I don't really work through the entirety of the job, but
because what I hear there is, if I'm the event marketer on that team, I have a CEO or president that is curious about, hey, what is the intent of this thing? They're really thinking through how to put me in a position to win to a certain extent, right? Like they're thinking through how to allocate capital, but like they don't want to allocate capital if you can't win, right? Then from there's clarity around that piece, right? They are conscious about what the vendors that I'm bringing into it, what they bring to the table that can help me. And then now, as an event director or an event marketer or whatever my role is, then I can sit there in my zone of genius and coordinate the things I want to do, create experiences, stuff like that. And at the end of the day, because all the other stuff was in place, now that person, if they're looking for a job in 2-3 years for whatever reason, they have a case study to show of like how we started and where it went, right?
I think this company was unique, like I said from the beginning. So I don't know if it's a great example or not, but it's like, the president and CEO is on the show floor there, and that's not always the case at these companies. But somebody high level with enough intuition and instinct, like I said, there's quantitative and there's qualitative. She was able to understand, like, these people are here.
Yeah.
There's something we're not doing a good enough job. So somebody at a bigger company, at a VP level that is there, that is on the show floor, someone's got to wave the flag. The event marketer has to wave the flag. Somebody's got to wave it if they have that feeling. Or in the opposite side, wave the flag if it's like, our ICP's not here.
Yep.
Like, this is stupid. Like, we're sitting here giving away bullshit in the same old booth. We're not seeing current customers. We're really not a lot of great leads in here, at least what I can see and feel. I don't really know how much a strategy would work. So it works both ways.
Yeah. Ability to make the call of it's the strategy or it's the show or maybe it's both.
Yeah.
Right? Yeah, that makes a lot of sense.
And it's always a combination, but I think it's like, the stigma that comes at companies is you have people that are like, oh, the trade shows don't work. Oh, they're a waste of money. Oh, they're a waste of time. Yeah. And I'm like, hey, that's fine. My question to you is, what is the strategy and approach?
Yeah.
And most times people can't answer it. And they're like, oh, well, the booth and sponsorship, blah, blah. And I'm like, okay, walk me through. Like, who's the client? What are you doing with them? What's their experience? How are you converting them? How are you creating leads? Is it customers? Is it new business? And a lot of people can't even answer it. So you're like, how can you tell me that it doesn't work? I know that it's not working by what you just told me.
Correct.
It's obvious it's not working.
And
I'm not saying it's going to, but I'm also saying, like, if you're not going to give it the best crack at the bat, you're never, ever going to know. Ever.
True. It's like Gary Vee says, like, what's the ROI of a basketball? For LeBron James, it's infinity. For Gary Vee, it's 0. Right? Or negative because he's torn an ACL or two.
That's a great quote. Yeah.
Right. So it's like, if you don't have, as an event marketer, if you don't have senior leadership that's curious and bought in and present,
very difficult
so
to
that
operate
they can
then,
validate your insights and give you clarity around what these insights are for, you're not going to progress in your career.
No.
So
I mean, I think you're just waiting for someone to listen to you, right? If you're like, I've met so many event marketers that are like, when I say to them about being burned out, constantly executing and planning and coordinating and doing more with less, they resonate with that message. They get it, right? So they understand that. Now, when they're going to somebody, the confidence in leadership to say, hey, I'm thinking this, we really need to make this move. There are event marketers who want to do those. They do recognize the thing. They want more strategy. They want to contribute to what's going on. Do they have someone that will listen? Do they have someone that's like, oh yeah, that makes sense? Or do they have someone that's like, hey, look, the CEO loves this event. They keynote, they speak. It's good for us just to be here. Just make sure you get the booth up, right? Like that sucks. That doesn't help them get where they want to go. So I would say, there's opportunity for them when they find somebody that is aligned with them and that will listen to them and that will give them an opportunity.
Let's hit on the title of the show. Why is the opportunity cost too high to not have that for the event marketer?
Why is the opportunity cost? Say that one more time. Why is the opportunity cost?
Why is life too short to work for someone that doesn't have that opportunity?
I mean, look, that's anything. I don't want to tell somebody what to do. I think people have jobs, they have families, they have bills to pay, and things of that nature. But I think where I would view it after that is, what kind of work do you want to do? Right? Like, I mean, I constantly preach to our company all the time. I'm like, look, not everybody's going to want to do the work that we want to do. Some people just want a price and some people just want a really cool design, or just honestly, it's subjectively what they think is cool. Yeah. And then they want to just, use the booth and go, and that's fine. And we're going to have to do, some level of that work. Yeah. So I preach our company all the time. Like, when we do this work, when we do get to do work that is more strategic and thoughtful and kind of recreating what a company does and it goes and drive results, like, soak that shit in, because it is cool and it is more fun. It is more galvanizing. So same to your question for the event marketer, right? When you're on that hamster wheel and you're just executing events and going from city to city and venue to venue and host site, and you're never really getting to stop and think, like, what are we doing? What are we creating? What are the outcomes that are happening, and building strategy in to go gain results? Yeah. I think eventually you're thinking about, what kind of work am I really doing? Yeah.
Yeah. And I would even make it even more urgent, in the sense that I think you only get, let's say, a good career, you have 4 to 5 stops, right?
Sure.
Like,
I think it depends, but yeah, sure.
Let's say, like 4 to 5 stops. And for the people that get stuck in that hamster wheel of, you're always just like in a never ending task list and never progressing.
Yeah, that sucks. Yeah.
Then you're not going to progress in your career. Like problems are never going to go away, right? You only get the opportunity to solve better problems,
Yeah.
but the higher income, the better work.
Yeah.
All this stuff is going to come when you can produce results. And if you're not able to take like the result that you produced at your last company and make it tangible and show it to somebody as a result that you can produce,
Yes.
and you have ideas of how to make more,
I did this here. I understand that.
you're just not going to get a better shot at it. You're not going to get a better salary. You're not going to get that promotion the next time. So like if you're like in that cycle, you need to find yourself a way to like, you need to have a light at the end of the tunnel, or you're setting yourself up for like a career where it's like, all right, all I'm going to make is like 70 grand for the rest of my life, and I'm always going to be doing this stuff, and it's going to suck.
Yeah, I think two things on that. One, I think, is this thought that I think progress is galvanizing. I at least know it is for me.
Yeah.
Tackling problems, making changes, rethinking things, and pushing towards something. It's like when a person starts to run. They're like, oh, I'm going to run a half mile. I'm going to run a mile. I'm going to go run 5. Okay, now I run 5 every day. You're just pushing. You're progressing. There's some kind of high in that. So I think when you get stagnant, is when you're not progressing.
Yep.
So when it comes relaying that into events, are you in a place where you feel like you're just putting on the event, you're just putting on the trade show, you're just getting it done? Or what are we chasing? And if I'm a really good event marketer working at a company, I am going to my VPs, my directors, my executives, whoever it is my boss, and saying, what are we chasing? What are we doing with this event program? Why does it exist? What are we trying to accomplish? How is it contributing to the success of this company? I want to be tied to that. I want to be on that train, right? And I think if you have leadership that doesn't respect that, you're at the wrong fucking place, and you're with the wrong leadership.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? If you just have a person that's like, yeah, you know what, just, I get it, but we're not there right now. And, just make sure that you execute, coordinate, get stuff done. I would be like, hey man, or hey lady, like, no thanks. Right.
Yeah.
So that's how I view that progress is intoxicating. So
Totally, man.
I think it's a big piece in events.
100%.
And it feels good when you garner results. It really does.
And I got to say, I know that you're super anti call to action on this show, but I am
anti.
You are super
God.
anti. But I'm gonna throw it out there that if you are struggling with that, right? Like if you're just like, you're in that, and you're just like, I'm so busy that I'm only going from event to event. I don't even have time to like theorize how I can approach this conversation. I think the framework that we developed at EMC, that Cody has put together, is a really, really good thing to reach out. So either reach out to you on LinkedIn.
Reach out to us, ask for the framework. We'll 100%, we'll send it to you. It is not a planning and coordinating framework where it's going to give you like step-by-step how to plan and coordinate a trade show and event. It is a strategy and an approach framework.
Yeah.
It is basically walking you through the questions you need to ask yourself, the questions you need to ask leadership. It is driving you to think differently about how you can garner results and create direction for a single trade show, for an entire program of trade shows, or for I would agree with that.
I've used it 5 times.
Yeah.
For 5 different events with 3 different clients.
Working.
And whether it is this event is in 2 weeks or, hey, we're planning this thing out in 3 months, it has helped me like zero in on the thing that I need to, the domino I need to knock over to prove a result. Right. So like reach out to you on LinkedIn for it. Shoot Cody an email, Cody at Rockway Exhibits. What's the email?
It's Cody, COTY at rockawayexhibits.com.
Yeah.
My favorite response on that framework, it's not done, right? So
it's a work in progress.
Yep. We had basically done a huge whiteboard exercise with our entire attendees at EMC, which is our host event, all event marketers, all director level people. And then we turned it into a framework. And I remember we did a call with them like a month later, presented it, got feedback. So this is a living, breathing thing that we're trying to create. And I remember after we presented it, we emailed it out to that whole group of people. And I think it was the next day, I think it was Drew. She wasn't able to make it, but her email was the favorite to me because it was like a day and a half later, and she had gone through it, and she just wrote back to the group. She's like, "This is pure gold." Yeah. And I do think it is good. It's on its way to being something. Yeah. And if not, it's almost just inspirational to get people thinking differently.
Yeah. Again, I used V1 before Cody made it even better, and it's really working for me. So that being said, that's the end of the call to action section, Matt. You're welcome.
Yeah.
And
thank you.
And what I want to end this with is we started this with the idea that got us into this was kind of the most dangerous side of this, which to me feels like the CEO or sales team or whatever that just wants to take a giant swing just because they want to take a giant swing and go, that could feel intoxicating
Yeah.
to the event marketer. But I think it's even more dangerous. You want to tell me a little bit, just kind of like
Yep.
how dangerous this idea of just like, yo, let's just get a tractor trailer and drive across the heartland and we're just going to show up at their door. Give me
Yeah.
like an example of that and why that's even more dangerous.
So I think the best story is a story I've told in the past about Squarespace, right? Where Squarespace, website platform, and essentially they had this really cool, funky 20 by 20 trade show booth idea. It was a big black cube, looked like their logo, one door in, one door out, couldn't see in, couldn't see out. And, I basically tried to get them to completely pump their brakes on it and be like, hey, it is cool. Like, I know you've ideated this. And whether it definitely was it wasn't like a low level person that was like, hey, this would be cool, let's run it through. It was executives. It was a director level. It was a VP of something. It was somebody with some pull because they rammed it and pushed it through. And I was just like, you've never been to the trade show. You really can't tell me if your audience is there. You think it's going to be there. You want to spend a ton of money on this thing. And it's a very specific niche, concept. It's really no strategy involved. You just think by showing up. I don't want to give a bad analogy, and they were like, basically, I'll never forget being in the Squarespace office. One of the VPs basically told me like, if you don't sell it to us, somebody will. And I was like, all right, didn't sell it to him. Was like, fine. Like, I just completely disagree with it, and I'd given them an alternative solution similar. Long story short, they bought it from somebody else. They spent like $250,000. It completely flopped, right? And then they called me back a little while later, built some 10 by 20s with us, did some smaller, more niche shows, a little bit different approach and style, and they crushed it because they were actually able to sit and think it through. So that stuff does happen a lot. And you do have CEOs and VPs and people that, some people get high on an idea that they think up.
Yep.
But my question always is, okay, so if you're going to switch to this idea, is it just because you like it, right? Or is it because you've thought through? So walk me through the strategy and the thought behind it. The other side of it is you're doing this now currently. Most are. They're already exhibiting or whatever it is, they're throwing a host event. They're not. They're doing a road show. They're not. And my thing is always, what is your strategy now?
Yep.
Is it working? What's not working? And is this new one built from that?
Yep.
Or is it just this new shiny object that you're now asking for pricing and a visual so you can show somebody else how cool this is? That happens a lot. Honestly, it happens a lot. And I'm all for new, cool, doing stuff differently type ideas.
Yep.
But I just think there needs to be some serious thought about what's happened in the past,
Yep.
why we're making that change, and
Yep.
what's the outcomes we're seeking.
I think if I'm an event marketer listening to this story, what I want to take away is like, get away from the idea of like, yeah, man, well, it's your company. You can walk away from it. This is my job, so I got to do it. Mm-hmm. Right? Like, get away from that and understand the idea that as long as you ask that question and you make it very clear that's like, okay, cool. We can take this, if they're really betting on it, you can say, go ahead, let's take this big swing. I'm going to help you all I can in it. If it doesn't work, I want to visit this.
Yeah, sure.
Right? So that's a good step forward. And then the other thing is, if you're not doing that, you're setting yourself to be so vulnerable because I feel like as the event director, if there's a big swing that you haven't asked these questions on, that you're just going to do without bringing your own expertise to the table, and it fails, you're going to get blamed for it.
Yeah.
Right? So like the bigger the swing, the bigger the black eye,
definitely, yeah.
the bigger market's going to be on your career. So you got to really stand up for this idea of like, are we executing a strategy? No, we're doing this because you think it's cool. Cool. But that's what we're doing. Okay, let's do it because you think it's cool. If it doesn't produce results, here's the alternative thing, and that's what I want to do. Do we have a handshake agreement on this next year?
Yeah.
Right?
And I think you have very smart people in these organizations, from the event marketer to VPs to directors to executives. So, you obviously have to identify that you do have very smart people. But I just think I would be using those smart people for better conversations. Like, you can't tell me that if you're able to get one of your VPs or directors, executives time, that you couldn't be like, hey, can we group think this trade show for a second?
Yeah.
What are objectives day one after the show that we can tally track and know that, man, that was a good show, or maybe that it wasn't? Mm-hmm. What are the results that we want? How do we get those results? What are the issues we have on the floor? Like, are we not having enough meetings? Do people not want to meet with us? Like, we've had clients where we're like, hey, the show is not a good setup for what you're trying to do.
Yeah.
Right? Like, you shouldn't barrel $140,000 into your trade show booth because the decision maker's not on the show floor and they're not coming there, right? I would spend $60,000 on the trade show booth, and then I would pump the rest of that money into offsite style things, suites, hospitality rooms, dinners, because your decision makers are off the floor. But honestly, there's not a lot of those conversations happening all the time, and I think there needs to be more of them.
I love it, man. I'm going to try to summarize as much as I can, and then I'll let you either correct or give a final go. We talked about kind of like 3 levels of, are you even looking at this thing as a sales and marketing channel? To, are the objectives that you're setting actually tied to results? To, are you thinking strategically through how this fits into the bigger picture? And all these other things. That is the getting versus not getting. If you're an event marketer in this position where you feel like your team doesn't get events, you need to have these conversations tying all that stuff together.
Yeah.
And ideally you say, okay, well, let's try the thing that you're saying. And if it doesn't work, let's go down this route.
Yeah.
You can use the EMC guide to guide that conversation. And then last but not least, if you're stuck in this position and you're spinning your wheels for too long and you don't ever get to break through to results, I think it makes sense to start looking for another job and looking for a place where you get that opportunity.
Sure, yeah. And I think one of the major pieces is the front part of that, which is companies have sales and marketing initiative style expectation for events, but they treat it like a cost of doing business. I think that's one of the biggest red flags you could find, right? So you're just misaligned from the beginning, right? And then how that bleeds down is everything you just described. And I think ultimately that does put event people, directors of events people in a bad position. Now they're trying to sell up. So at times, I think a lot of this message should be for someone that's the VP of sales, the chief revenue officer, the CMO, where it's like, wow, that's us.
Yep.
Man, my expectations are this, but we are treating it like that. Hey, what is the strategy? Like, why not, if you're the CMO or you're the VP of marketing, sales, whatever, maybe walk into an event or a marketing meeting and say, hey, like, I'm just wondering, like, we have this huge trade show in 6 months. What is our strategy here? What, right? Like, what are the goals? What are the strategy? And what have we been accomplishing? And if you can't get that answer really fast, you know that you are the company, that you have the expectations of a sales and marketing channel type of effort, but it for some reason has bled down to where it's being treated like cost of doing business.
That's the show.
That's it.